Lesson 7.3, Scientific Notation. If you'd like to write the slide down, you should pause now before you begin. Okay, scientific notation is when a number is expressed in scientific notation when it is written as a product of a factor and a power of 10. Now, if you don't understand what those terms mean, product is when you multiply something. So scientific notation looks something like this. 2.6 times 10 to any number 5. You see the x in the middle is the product. Okay, that's the multiply. And when you multiply two things together, each one is called a factor. So this 2.6 is a factor, and the 10 is actually a second factor. So two factors are multiplied together, they make a product. That's where the terms come from. Now the factor, which is the number in the front, must be greater than or equal to 1, but less than 10. Now, let's take a look at some of these numbers. Number 1 says rewrite it in standard form. So currently it's in scientific notation. So if we're going to move it into standard, we need to look at the exponent to see how many places to move the decimal. Now this says -3. So I take my 7.48 and I'm going to move the decimal 3 places to the left. That's 1, 2, and 3. So the decimal is moving in front. So a final answer, so that's rewriting with all those loops, is 0.00748. Now, if the exponent happens to be positive, we're going to move it in the other direction. So I start out with my 2.19, and I move the decimal point 1, 2, add a 0, 3, add a 0, 4, add a 0, 5. So to rewrite that so it's a little bit neater, that would be 219,000. The decimal's at the end. So if it's a negative exponent, you put the zeros in the front. If it's a positive exponent, you put the zeros at the right side. All right, let's look at the other way to write this. So we have a bunch of zeros in the front, and now the decimal, which needs to go behind the first number that's not a 0. Well, the first number that's not a 0 is the 6. So I'm going to put the decimal behind the 6. So that's going to make this 6.72. Now to figure out my exponent, I count how many places I move it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I moved it 7 places. And since the 0 is in the front, this will be -7. Now for B, this time the zeros are at the other end. But I need to put the decimal, which is currently behind the last 0, I need to put it behind the first number, which is 3. So this is going to be 3.022. And now it's time to count the spaces again. 3, 6, 9, 12. And since the 0 is on the left, or on the right side, this is going to have a positive 12. And that's how you write the numbers in scientific and standard notation by hand. Now, if you're using your calculator, the calculator will give you some of these answers. Now, sometimes the calculator will change it back and forth, but it depends on the number. So if I took the first one, A, 7.48 times 10, exponent hits this caret button, negative 3. You see, that's how the calculator writes scientific notation, with a little capital E for the times 10 part. Now the second one was 2.19 times 10 to the fifth. You see that number, it actually writes it out for you in standard form. So normally when there's only a few zeros at the end, the calculator will write it out. But if there's a few zeros in the front, it may convert it to scientific. See, if you look at A in example 2, you have 0.000000672. If you hit enter, it converts it to scientific notation for you. And then B, which is 32022, and then 000000000, and it converts that one to scientific notation too. So it's necessary that you know how to use the calculator to solve these. All right, second slide. Okay, here are some problems that we need to work out. We have some multiplication and some division problems. Now, if we look at number 3A, what should be number? We need to take the numbers 6.5 and 8.7. Those need to be multiplied together. While the 12 and the negative 15, they should be, right, they should be added together. So go ahead and multiply the yellow numbers and add the green numbers together. So 6.5 times 8.7 equals 56.55. And 12 plus negative 15 is negative 3. Now that would be an acceptable answer, except there's one part that's wrong. It's not in scientific notation. The decimal is in the wrong position. It's going to need to be moved and put behind the 5. So if you move it over one spot, that's going to be 5.655. Now since you moved it one position, you're going to need to change the exponent by 1. Now the way I remember this is, the first number got smaller. 56 went to 5. That's smaller. So the other side, the exponent, needs to get bigger. And 1 bigger than negative 3 is negative 2. So this is the number in scientific. Now, make sure that you can write the number both scientific or standard, because on the homework that I assigned for this, I'll expect you to write it both ways. So to put this in regular, you're going to have to move the decimal 2 places. So it's currently here. Move it 1, 2. So make sure you can move the decimal 2 places and write the answer in standard and scientific. Now, we'll move on to B. You see the little 2 on the outside? Let's square what's on the inside. 7.8 is a number. Let's square it. 7.8 squared. That's 60.84. Now, the 2 and the 4, these two exponents, they need to be multiplied, and that's going to result in a negative 8. And then once again, this is not scientific notation. So we're going to move the decimal place over one spot, make this 6.084. Now since that number got smaller, make negative 8 bigger by 1. And bigger than negative 8 is negative 7. And that's your answer in scientific notation. And then make sure you can write that in standard if necessary. But we're focusing mostly on scientific, so let's move on. This is division, so divide. Divide the yellow numbers. 2.3958 divided by 1.98. 1.2. And what do you do with the little numbers? Right, subtract them. 3 minus 8. 3 minus 8 is negative 5. And that is in scientific notation. Now you can come over here and do B. You can go ahead and pause and do it yourself. Divide the two factors in the front. 1.305 divided by 1.45. That's 0.9. Exponents, subtract 3 minus negative 4. That's positive 7. Don't forget it's 3 minus negative 4. Minus minus makes plus. Now this number is not in scientific notation. Decimal point needs to move over one spot and make it 9. Now if you make that number bigger, you need to make the exponent smaller. And smaller from 7 is 6. And that's the answer in scientific notation. Now that I've showed you how to do all of these by hand, I'm going to go over how to do each one on the calculator to make sure that you can do it that way also. So let me get the calculator back up. Okay, that's clear. So the very first one, parentheses, 6.5 times 10 caret 12, close parenthesis. Parenthesis again, 7.8 times 10 caret negative 15. That's the entire problem typed in from parenthesis to end. And it gives you the answer. Notice it gave it to you this time in standard. Now we can't be sure which way it's going to work each time, so you need to be able to go back and forth. B, parentheses, 7.8 times 10 to the negative 4. Close parenthesis and put a squared on the outside. And that one's 6.084 times 10 to the negative 7th, and we're correct again. Now when you want to do division problems, put the first scientific number in parentheses, and then close the parenthesis, hit the divide by button, and then put the denominator in parentheses also. And that's the entire problem with the division symbol in the middle. Hit enter, and you get 1.21 times 10 to the negative 5, verifying the answer that you see over there. And the last one, parentheses, times 10 to the third, close parenthesis, divide by, parentheses for the denominator also, and hit enter, and you get 9 million, which is 9 times 10 to the 6th. Now again, the calculator may put it in standard or may put it in scientific. That's why you need to be able to know how to go back and forth. I hope this was helpful.